Welcome to Love Your Library, Hampshire Libraries podcast. I'm Hattie Dulac, here with my co-host Isaac Fravashi. Hi Isaac, how are you doing?
Good, thanks Hattie. It's good to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Are you reading anything interesting at the moment?
Well, I've just started The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner, which is it's a bit Orange is the New Black. She's in prison looking back sort of on her life and it's kind of reflecting about what it's like being in a women's prison as well for a life sentence. So yeah, I really look forward to getting my way through that. How about you? What are you reading?
Yeah, well, I've read that one and I do recommend it. It does have some good twists and turns to it, I would say. So definitely worth a read for fans of Orange is the New Black and that kind of thing. I am reading All That Remains by Sue Black. She's a forensic anthropologist who looks at not just sort of someone's body when they die, but also their life and probably more importantly their life and how they got there. Her book is all about the kind of processes, not just biologically of death, but surrounding kind of the grieving process and the lead up and the way that people kind of live in their final moments and the way that the body tells that story as well as anything else. And it's a really interesting read. I think it's not what I expected. Yeah, it reminded me quite a lot of Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd, which is a sort of biography of a person who does post-mortems and stuff like that. It's a really, really good book. It's got a few elements of that kind of true crime thing to it. It's within the same sphere, I would say. So if you're a fan of that, you might like it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, I've read All That Remains, so I'll have to read that other one. So always good to have a bit of a science book as well. I think it's nice to have sort of somebody who's so knowledgeable in a field sort of explain something to you from the kind of ground up, really. Yeah, I love that kind of book. And of course, a thank you to our supporter BorrowBox. Using your library number and PIN to log into the app, you can download ebooks and audiobooks straight to your phone or tablet.
Yeah, that's right. And each month, several titles are available for unlimited download with no need to reserve. And one of those for this month is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue, which happens to be our online reading group's book of the month.
If you want to come and read with us, you can find a link to The Wonder and the reading group in our episode show notes.
Now, Isaac and I recently spoke with a couple of fellow podcasters, Pauline Walker and Patricia Cumper. They host a podcast called The Amplify Project, and together they interview Black writers from various disciplines and genres.
The result is some really interesting conversations and a great exploration of contemporary writing and the kind of social and background elements that come into writing as well. Really, really interesting conversations. You can find links to the Amplify Project in the episode show notes. But for now, let's hear from when we caught up with Pauline and Patricia.
For our listeners, today we've got Patricia and Pauline from the Amplify Project talking to us, and they're going to be telling us a little bit more about what they do and how our listeners and how library service users can better support the work that they do in that project. So how are you guys doing? Welcome to the podcast. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, do you want to just give us a bit of an overview of what the Amplify Project is, what it does, and visions and stuff like that?
You want to kick off, Pat?
I'll do that, and then you tell them all the things that I've forgotten to do. Just as for what it is, it's a series of podcasts. We have, as I'd call them, conversations. So then they vary between sort of 40 minutes and an hour, and they're conversations with we've called it Black writers in their own words, and we've got playwrights and novelists and poets and memoirists and young adult writers. We've got all sorts, and really what it is one of our interviewers described it as one of those conversations on the bus where you can just talk about everything. So it's a nice safe space for them to talk about stuff. And then what we are is also, there's a website that goes with it. We've got blogs up on there. You can access the conversations through that. So that in practical terms, that's what it is. But for us, it's a passion project, isn't it, Pauline?
Yeah, it is a passion project because we're both writers. Pat is far more experienced than me. I'm kind of writing a novel at the moment. But in this project, we try to sort of take the background and foreground our guests, because it's really all about them and their work and the craft of writing. So that's what we're really interested in, and exploring their lives and really putting it out there that there is a Black British canon of work. So yeah.
We've been told, I've worked in the arts, Pauline has worked in the arts, and you get this message that there isn't really a canon of Black British work. And we're kind of going, no, there is. We know the writers who are making it. So we thought, rather than, because you know what happens, somebody writes a book and there's a big promotion and then they disappear for like 5 years. So we thought, what about trying to establish them as thinkers and creative people and people of importance in their own right, and that people needed to know more about it. And it's decision makers, are you going to commission a playwright? Are you going to, read somebody's novel? It's people who are just interested in the craft, because a lot of people, they always think they have a book in them, so they want to know. And it's students, and it's just, they're just quite gentle conversations, but sometimes life's a bit frantic and a bit polarized, and something gentle that just explores an idea and, is really kind of, sort of embracing, I think is kind of what we were aiming for. Yeah. And
we really kind of structure it, very loosely structure it, sort of with three sort of main points. So we always start with, their childhood and what did words and stories mean to them, so growing up. And then we hit kind of like, where they are now in their creative lives. And then we try to end on something, we do ask them actually, what can be a provocative question for some, but not for others, is about being a writer and being a Black writer specifically, and what that term and that label means. And then we kind of end with, something about celebration, ask them to tell us something to celebrate themselves. And in between, obviously, we're talking about the work and how they generate that work.
And the question about celebrating themselves is the hardest one for them to answer. It's really strange. They really struggled to say something positive about themselves. And I'm sitting there going, but you're brilliant. And I can't say that. I want them, to be able to say something wonderful about themselves. But I mean, some, like Pauline was saying, because we structured it in a way, we can sort of compare bits and bobs. And actually, the childhood of writers seems to be remarkably similar in that there's, that's not the best way to put it, but an element of loneliness, and that stories and words have become very much a part of how they define themselves and how they learned about the world. The other thing we found, which is kind of gender specific, is that men seem to take the sort of title of poet or playwright or whatever it is much more quickly than women do. Women practically have to win an award before they say, oh yes, I'm a poet, or yes, I'm a playwright. So that we found really interesting. But the variety of stories and backgrounds and just incredible. And we feel really lucky that they sort of opened up to us and told us some of the stories that they did.
Yeah, I remember that we had one of our writers, I won't say who it is, kind of right when we sort of finished recording, and there's a little bit of downtime where everyone's like, oh, that was lovely, and this and the other, and they said, oh, I've just been sitting here with a glass of wine. I've been really enjoying myself. And so, which is a nice compliment to us, I think, that they were relaxed enough to enjoy themselves and have a glass of wine. And it was in the afternoon. That's probably the point. Not necessarily after 6 o'clock, after the yard arm.
9 in the morning. No.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good point. I mean, because it's such a personal thing, writing, I think people really invest so much of themselves personally into a book that your own identity or your vision of identity always comes through in a book. But I think from our experience, we interview a lot of authors, and I think we've been lucky to have some really, really amazing Black British authors on our podcast. And that is one of the common threads that we find as well, specifically with these writers. There's such a strong sort of connection, or maybe even a focal point on a bit of a disconnection with their own culture or identity. And it comes across so well in the books that they write, but also in the kind of conversations that we have with them. It's such a nice way for us to get a bit of an insight and see into their development and their lives and things like that. I think it's just wonderful.
Then we have somebody like Juliet Jokes Romero, who was a journalist for a long time and traveled to Haiti and to Mexico and to East Africa and all sorts of places. And her approach is so, well, research-based, because she's a journalist first, but it's so international. I mean, that's absolutely lovely. And then you get the poetry of somebody like Rachel Long, which is just very much about, it's not a small life, but it's a really deeply examined life. So it's everything from going to the hair salon, and somebody eating chicken and then doing your hair, and just the details of life. So it's that range. And then we got Nick McCullough, who grew up between Uganda, Kenya, and the UK. So he again has a very sort of international focus and understands what it means to be forced to leave a society, urgently. And yeah, we had a wonderful interview, and I think Colin won't mind us saying so, where he talks about he was educated at a really posh school. His parents were Caribbean. Yeah. They were in Luton, and his dad paid for it by hustling a little bit of ganja around the place. And, that's how the school fees got paid. And of course, Colin has benefited from it hugely. So you've got this very public school voice telling this really interesting story. So
yeah, he was very much like a raconteur, I think, in the old kind of, I'm showing my age now, but Peter Ustinov type vibe, where you just give them a subject and off they go, and you'd be really entertained. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect podcast guest.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. His was the longest, wasn't it?
I think
it's the longest.
Yeah.
Gonna have to bookmark that one. Give it a listen.
Listening to you to talk about the kind of variety and the kind of conversational aspects of the podcast, they sort of seem so sort of led by curiosity, I think was how I encountered them anyway. Just sort of really looking into how the writers are getting started, what they want to explore in themselves and in the world, and sort of trying to situate these kind of big questions. But I think what I kind of wanted to know how you two came to know each other, and how the Amplify Project sort of really started from the ground up, really.
Right. I met Pauline. I was head of Talawa Theatre Company, and Pauline came to work as a coordinator of an umbrella organization for lots of the arts. All right, over to you, Pauline. What happened after that?
What happened after that? So I met Pat. This is about back in 2010, I think. So obviously, looking now, we know each other for like 12 years. So yes, Pat was running the theatre company. I was looking after this umbrella organisation. And actually, for me, that was the first time that I'd been in an environment where there were all these small black theatre companies. I hadn't really known that they'd existed, because I'd worked for a big organisation before and didn't realise that there's all this groundswell of work and these wonderful writers that are writing this work. So we met each other. We worked on various projects together over these last sort of 12 years, always around black writing, Pat's own writing. I actually produced one of her plays, which is one of my favourites, called Chickafoot Boys, which is about Jamaican soldiers in World War I. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful play. And so we've always, we're friends and colleagues now. So we've always, been talking about around these kind of, the work for Black British writers. And I also look after the Alfred Fagan Award, which is a playwriting award for Black playwrights. And back in 2020, sort of, a few months into the pandemic, we were having one of our customary discussions about the state of the world, what it all means. And, we just started talking about, Black British writers don't really get that same presence within our society as they should, really, and that kind of promotion. And we just started talking around it, and, just came up with the idea, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time working in radio in the Caribbean, but quite a lot here. I do a lot of audio drama. I commentate for the World Service every now and then. So I like radio. Pauline was much more hesitant at first, but she's very comfortable with it now. But I do like the immediacy of radio, and the fact that conversations, you can feel like somebody's beside you. You don't, and there's a lot more thought, I think, involved in listening and interpreting. So I really like radio. And then the whole business of podcasting came up, and we thought, why not? So we did we went and trained. Is that right?
Yes, that was fun. Yes, we had some training on how to edit and how to put a podcast together and structure it and everything. And I started listening to them more, because I used to listen to a lot of radio before. Obviously, Pat's already versed in the art of working in radio, so I had that kind of head start, really. And yeah, we just started fleshing out ideas, writing them up, putting them down on paper, testing them with a few friends, getting quite rigorous about what it is that we wanted to do, and try to keep it simple and quite focused. And then we brought on a marketing consultant who's a friend that we both worked with. just to kind of really sharpen up the thinking that we were doing. And then we were thinking, well, we're freelancers, we're both, we work in the arts, we don't have any money, how are we going to fund this project? Because we didn't want to just be something that, you do in your bedroom, which is lovely, but we wanted to have a certain kind of quality about it. So we thought, right, let's apply to the Arts Council England.
We have an ongoing relationship with them anyway. They've funded various things that we've done. We'd when Pauline produced a play, for example, they'd invested in that, and a theatre company we'd set up at one point. So we put the full and ambitious project to them.
Yes.
And they said, this is a lovely idea, but no.
Oh.
Go away and rejig it. So we went away and pulled it down. One of the Arts Council, a lady who works there, just got in touch with us and said she'd help, and she did. And we pulled it down, and then they funded that second bit, which was really good in the sense that we had to really figure out what it is we wanted to do. And yeah, that second one was funded. And the other good thing, particularly for us, is in the middle of the pandemic, we were able to give actors and writers and producers just fees, just little bits and bobs here and there, but it's just that business of turning over the money so that people in the creative sector had some money to do. So, and yeah, the other big lesson, of course, was the marketing. Most marketing we've done before was we're part of an organization and you market something they've done. This is starting from scratch, which is just a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you know what it's like trying to, you follow your downloads, or you don't really get figures for listenerships, but it's about downloads and how many people are actually engaging, and that's one of the reasons why we have our website as well. So people can actually come, they're on the website, all the podcasts are on the website, so people can either download them or they can listen straight from the website. So yeah, that was been a strong kind of learning curve for us to deal with the marketing side of things. But we had we had some good marketing. What am I trying to say?
Response.
Yes.
But the other thing, Pauline probably wouldn't say, but I will, is that we have fairly complementary skills. I'm quite good at blathering and structuring, and Pauline is really, really good at delivering. And I know that she has an intensive creative side. So this is to be that disciplined and to be creative is remarkable. But that allows the project to, and we operate it really professionally. We make sure that
absolutely
it's done exactly as it should be done, because it's public money and you never ever waste public money. The other thing, of course, is to have fun. If you don't enjoy doing it, it's going to become such a burden, because that's the first thing our instructor said. Don't start it if you don't intend to keep it going for a good while.
Yeah.
A lot of people go in and do 3 and then go, I can't do it. No. Long haul. So you have to enjoy it. And I love talking to writers. I mean, it's always fun. Some of them I've known for decades. Some of them I'm only just meeting. We talked to Hafsa Zayan, who wrote We Are All Birds of Uganda, that won the Murky Book Prize, which is just a new writer, brand new. She's written this huge story. And, just the sort of confidence of her going in and just taking on that really big story. I'd really, we enjoyed doing that. And then you've got, Trish Cook, who's been writing pantomimes and children's books and plays and for 30 years, I would have thought. So, yeah, we've got a good range. And lovely Alex, Pauline.
Alex Wheatle, yeah, amazing writer who started out more, I suppose, as a adult novelist, but now writes young adult fiction, and is kind of well known all over the world. But he had such a troubled upbringing, was in the care system, and then moved from Surrey, where there were very few Black people that he met, to Brixton, which is obviously a very multicultural area, and had difficulty finding his place, his identity within that Black community there. But what's really inspiring about Alex is that, he never gave up on writing when somebody suggested to him, oh, you could write. It could have been easy for him to just give up, but he didn't. And he's kept going. And, so he's one of, he was really inspirational to talk to listen to, really.
Yeah.
You have such a sort of wide range of authors, and it's, you said it's in your website and on your podcast description, it's page, stage, and screen, isn't it? That you go for.
Yeah.
But it seems to be the kind of the huge wide range of creativity that you can pull on and investigate there. How do you kind of pick who to talk to?
Who wants to talk to us?
Yeah, well, we did have a wish list at the beginning, initially, so that at least we could start approaching people. And then, and it was difficult at the beginning. I mean, a few people came on board very early and kind of got what we're doing, but sometimes you need to have a product before people can then say, oh, I see what you're doing, and I'll be interested in doing that. So it was, because we're both from theatre and the literary scene, there was a long list. There still is a long list because we've hardly, touched the surface, as I would say. So I think at the beginning we wanted that kind of, because we were thinking of doing 12 to start with, so that 4 poets, 4
playwrights, 4 novelists, something like that.
Something like that. And obviously try to have a mix of, all genders in there as well. And then it was like putting those out and seeing who came back and said yes, and then so we started putting the list together that way. And so what's one of the things that we love is that they're diverse and across all ages as well. So yeah.
And there's still lots more to go. We've got
absolutely.
We wrapped up the first season. We've done 10.
Yeah.
And then we have at least 7 of the next season.
Yeah, 7 already lined up for the second.
Interesting. I mean, everybody from Teresa Coco, who wrote Rocks, which won all of those awards, and her first play won lots of awards.
Yeah.
And then Roy Williams, who's been in theatre absolutely forever. And then Sara Collins, who's Franny Langton is about to go to, just been adapted for film, I think.
Has it?
So,
Has it? Oh, brilliant. I love that one.
I think she's done the adaptation, hasn't she?
I'm a hawk on the Twitter, babe. I follow all the
that was the other thing that we had to do, is build up that social media following, which is just like, it's really hard to do. But we've got a good marketing guru.
And we're still getting there with that. I think we're not really good social media animals yet, but we're definitely getting there.
It's a tough,
the lovely thing is the bookshelf has gone from this to this.
Yes.
We've got an excuse to buy everything as it comes up.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, actually, are you finding that you're kind of like reading now outside of your, reading comfort zone? Are you exploring things that you probably wouldn't have 3 years ago when it comes to reading and investigating that?
Oh yeah. I would. Some of the poets I would never have read. You and Anthony had an interesting discussion.
Yeah, Anthony Joseph. He's originally from Trinidad, but still got his lovely beautiful musical Trinidadian voice, and he is described as a surrealist poet, surrealist novelist, and one of his poetry collections I was reading, it was like, I don't really get it, but it's lovely. And I kind of mentioned that to him. So that's his work wasn't necessarily something that I would have gone to immediately, but now you begin to have an appreciation for this work. And actually what I'm finding is that I will try that writer, or will try that writer, because it's lovely to have that kind of versatility within our own reading as well. But that has been the fun part of it. I mean, it's a bit difficult when we set ourselves sometimes it's happened when we've had to do 2 interviews in a week, and when you're doing the research, and it's like, oh my God, I've got to cram all this reading in.
And sometimes we'll divvy it up, so I will read, and you'll read that.
Yeah.
And we ask the right questions.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is obviously let down a writer and not feel that you've actually got some kind of handle on their work. It's we give them that respect, really. So yeah.
No, it's important. So what then do you like to read? Is there a sort of genre that either of you are married to generally, or not?
I don't think I'm married to a genre. I mean, I have myself been reading more Black writers in the last 2 to 3 years anyway. And I like it's difficult, the genres that bookshops or publishers put on novels that are out there. So I, read anything. I've got some books here that I took out just to remind myself what I kind of like to read. So things like The Memory of Love by Aminata Fauna, Toni Morrison's Beloved, Andrea Levy's Small Island, and then we jumped to Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, and George Orwell, 1984. And The Girl on the Train. So I do like sometimes I like a thriller type novel, or a criminal novel, just for those things, just kind of, because I like things that are plot heavy in some ways, and you're trying to guess what's going to happen next. So sometimes I enjoy those. Pat, what do you like reading?
I adapt a lot of stuff. I sort of abridge and adapt books quite a lot. So sometimes books represent work for me. So But for example, going into Poppy Show, partly because I've known Leonie for a long time, but also I know the resonances of that world, having lived in the Caribbean and lived here. There's a kind of sense memory that goes with it. I mean, the most intense one for me recently was Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, which just brought back just every memory. But also I thought, I found myself sitting on my little veranda just weeping at the end, thinking, no, 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 I don't want that to happen to those characters. I get quite intensely involved. But I grew up, and this is why I guess the library thing so appealed to me. I grew up on Georgette Hale, Dick Francis. I mean, you're sitting in the Caribbean and all, at that point when we used to go on holiday, there wasn't even electricity, it was lamps, and, you're buying ice to keep things cold. So reading was one of the major things that we did. So it's always been a part of the way that, that I pick up and read, which is just, I even read the back of packets. It's just a habit, that I have. But I also am a little bit sad, I have to say. I have two grandsons, and the role that the library played for me coming up as a child, which was, we were just dumped there every Saturday, and we had painting classes, and we were allowed eventually into the adult library, and we could go through the stacks, and the newspapers were there, and all the latest magazines. And of course, if you're in Jamaica, the latest National Geographic or the latest Scientific American or anything like that was, you practically scrap over it, because those were the things that talked about, a wider world. And I don't see it being quite the same with my grandson. So doing this has really made me sort of think, how do I, chiver them a bit more, perhaps? Because they love stories and they absorb them, but not necessarily reading. And I think that's quite sad.
So I suppose when you sort of can turn on your phone and be immediately connected to everything, it's sort of difficult, I don't know, to almost balance making time where something maybe reading would be the natural way that you would access that information, or reading would be the way that you discovered new countries and new stories and new worlds, and now maybe through, I don't know, other media, that's not necessarily the default way we come across them, is it? It can be, I don't know, a difficult thing to balance, I think, can't it?
Well, I'm stealth grandma, because what I have done, when I'm visiting and I stay over, I read to my grandson, even though he's about 9, just as he's going to sleep. Because my thing is that one day he'll become so curious about what's happened next, and I'm not there. He's going to pick up a book. That's my stealth grandma tactic. But we've gone through quite a few things. The Marcus Rashford book, a couple of lots of David Walliams, all of that. Really, as you say, plot-driven, really exciting, really adventurous kind of stuff. So yeah, I have a sneaky plan to get them reading a bit more.
It's like guerrilla storytelling. It's funny.
Lie down and go to sleep while I talk to you, boy.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what we should, the tactics we should employ at the libraries, come in for a nap and we'll read to you by force.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we used to do when I was a kid at primary school. There was obviously the school library, but you used to fall asleep in school. You have your reading time, you'd all be sitting on the floor or cushions or whatever it was, and you would kind of fall asleep. And I do remember as a kid as well that we used to take trips to the library. School kids, we all used to go to the library together. Yeah, and I used to love that. I mean, libraries are, I just think they're just so really important as space is, just to be able to go and be, and actually in this heavily technological world, it's just a place of nice and calm and quiet, so I think it still has a place, and I think it should always be free, and it should be in every town and every city. So
I mean, just thinking about it, it felt to me like the diminution has been a loss. And I understand them say, oh, we've got the internet, we don't need it. No, the library was never just reference books. It was always much more than and it represented for me a kind of democratization of creativity and information and that kind of stuff. And you shouldn't be hampered in terms of your educational possibilities or even your creative possibilities by where you come from. And so libraries to me were really sort of a huge part of that. So yeah, this really made me think an awful lot, because I've been around museums quite a bit. I've been on the board of museums, and I think they do with objects, I think, what libraries do with books and information, which is open up worlds and, provide an egalitarian way, so long as they're free, an egalitarian way for people to learn and to enjoy.
Yeah, I think our library teams really do see themselves as custodians of information, or providing that kind of key of access to information for everyone. And I think that's such a lovely role for people to have in society as well. I think the feeling of like you're giving back working in a library is probably just one of the best feelings ever. It's a joy to be part of the public sector, to be able to do that. So yeah, definitely one of the greatest significances, I think, of libraries. What did you find about, or as we're sort of emerging from the pandemic, are you finding that there's adjustments that you're making with your recordings and things like that?
Because we started recording online, we've just kept with that actually, and I think that has worked really well. What we have done as well is that we've, well, I guess we've sent them a little plug-in microphone as well to just try and get the best sound possible. I was really worried at the beginning, wasn't I, Pat, about like, oh God, the sound, the quality of the audio wasn't going to be good enough. And nobody's commented about that, so it must be okay. Yeah. So
I don't think, I mean, it's what's nice about doing it this way is that actually we take up maybe an hour and a half of people's time. I think if they had to travel somewhere and then we had to sit down in the studio and then do this and do that, we're talking about 3.5, 4 hours. And that's a sort of a different commitment. And we might have to be thinking about filming it and so on. So I think we've kept it fairly simple. And made sure that the audio quality is decent. What we would like at some point to do, because we've thought about 500 variations of what we'd like to do, is there's a group of women called the BB Crew. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but like Joe Martin, who was the Black Doctor Who, and people who have been on EastEnders, but they originally started out as just a crew of women working together in drama in Theatre Royal Stratford East, and they've all written something, they've all done something, and I thought how wonderful to just take them all into studio. There's about 5 of them, and they're manic and they're genius, and it's just record that as one of the podcasts. So we have lots of plans. Oh, and the Titan one, we'd like to get sort of really amazing people like Margaret Busby, who's been a publisher and a writer, and get them in and have them talk about the history of the AME literature. Are we allowed to say BAME anymore? I'm not sure, but you know what I mean. Minority ethnic, whatever.
Black British. Black British.
In all of its wonderful variations. So yeah. But I don't think it's going to change much because it allows us because we're definitely not paid full time to do this. So we all have other things, that we're doing. So this allows us to be really effective in the time that we spend, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a lot of really fun sort of projects coming up with that as well. So maybe a good kind of place to touch on it. How do you think that our listeners can kind of get involved with supporting the Amplify project, and where can they go if they kind of want to hear more?
I think definitely go to our website, which is theamplifyproject.co.uk. We're very proud of it. It has pink in it, which I like. So anybody who knows me knows that I love pink. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, so all the podcasts are there. And what we've also done is that we've got transcriptions of each podcast as well, to just try and be as accessible as possible. And also sometimes people just like to read the transcript. And we've got the bios of the writers. And so, yeah, a lot of the information there is on our podcast. You can also, we're on all the big major podcasting platforms like Apple, iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Deezer, Stitcher FM, Player FM and Deezer. All these, there's so many of them, but we're all on the big ones, the big main ones. So, yeah, just search for us under the Amplify Project. Black writers in their own words, and will pop up. But the website is the first way in. So we'd love people to listen, download if they want to download, and listen from the website. And if they enjoy it, actually for us, it's about trying to get as many people listening. So just recommend us to friends, family, colleagues, networks.
Yeah, we're about to. We've sort of wrapped up season 1, the first 10. We even did a little mini podcast with the two of us talking about that, and then we're heading into season 2. So we're at the point of sort of fundraising and trying to get all the finances in place and so on. We always want to be able to pay the writers and everybody that works with us. So that's our challenge for the next couple of months to raise the funding necessary for season 2. But we've got some amazing writers, like we said, Roy Williams and Teresa Coco and Drida, and just amazing, writers who are now very happy to work with us, and we're very happy to work with them. So we're going to go on doing those podcasts and sort of banking them. And so fundraising and banking amazing interviews, that's our project for the next couple of months. Yeah. And then we'll be back with season 2. But yes, it would be lovely if people would listen and download. And you can choose a poet, have a playwright. What about a young adult? We've got and actually we want to do somebody who writes lyrics, and maybe even somebody who works with graphic novels, because I think the idea of storytelling, is something that we'd really like to explore.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, especially when you can sort of tell stories in so many different ways as well, isn't it? You can, limited literally only by the human imagination. I can imagine that the kind of exploration you can do is endless, isn't it?
Yeah, my favorite quote is Ben Ockery: "We're half human, half stories." The idea that we accrete other people's experience to ourselves through stories to make us who we are. And I really like. I always quote that one because I think Ben Ockery is quite clever about the idea of what stories are and what they do. But yes, we've enjoyed having so much time. Well, being allowed to really play around and listen to how a work goes from thought to fruition to out into the world. It's been, I feel very lucky.
Yeah.
I think everyone benefits from hearing about how stories get from conception to reality. I think we've kind of touched on it in plans of world domination. We might have to leave it there. But is there, in terms of the future of the project, where would you love to see this taken? Maybe not in the coming months, because obviously we know that you've got season 2 coming out, and you've got plenty more authors on playwrights and poets and people from the creative industries in the pipeline. But is there a sort of longer term vision?
We've talked about lots of things. We would really like to keep this going and to spread, the genres as wide as we possibly can, and certainly in terms of age ranges, gender, sexuality, everything. But we were also thinking, we know so many wonderful Asian writers, and we were thinking if there might be a sort of a parallel format that we could interweave if we wanted to. But the idea that what's interesting, I think, about this is that we're already familiar with the culture and background of the people that we're speaking with. So there's a comfort level for them speaking to us. So we wondered if there was, an Asian version, an East Asian version, an Eastern European version. I don't know, but ways in which the idea of having conversations between writers that are from similar backgrounds that allow that sort of thing. So developing that perhaps in other ways. And perhaps going a bit more international as well. I know we have listeners in Canada. We certainly have in the Caribbean. I don't know if we picked up any in West Africa yet, but we're pretty sure
we're getting there.
Yeah, we're pretty sure that we will, especially with Oladipo's podcast. So yeah, it's about small steps, getting there slowly, making sure we do it well. But there are lots of things that I think we would like to do in the future. But building the audience, having them trust us, creating something that they rely on to be there.
It was great speaking with Pauline and Patricia there, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the next series of the podcast. And if you want to discover some amazing new writers, you can find recommendations from the Amplify Project over on the Hampshire Library's blog. It's a really great collection of poetry, plays and novels. You can find a link to the post in the episode show notes.
But that's about all we have time for today. Thank you to BorrowBox for supporting this podcast, and thank you for listening. I'm Hattie Dulac.
And I'm Isaac Travashi.